Let's get right to some trending trades. Andrew Wang is with us, managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Andrew, it's great to see you. Obviously, I know there's going to be some great opportunities in this market that feels pretty wild. What do you think about the volatility? I mean, we get a 1,000-point up day and then a 1,000-point down day?
Well, this is our new reality. We definitely see big percentage moves on the upside and downside on a daily basis. And not surprisingly, all the headlines and talk is about coronavirus.
So what are you saying? Like, what are you telling people when they ask about what they should be doing? I've been very much in a wait and see mode because there was no way to really know whether or not you hit bottom. Do you think we hit bottom?
I don't think that we've hit bottom. I think that we have the benefit here in the United States that we can look to other countries. We can get some clues from China, from Iran, from Italy, countries that are ahead of us, and get some indication on what are things that we can do better, but also get some clues into how things might play out for businesses, the economy, and the stock market. And I think because we're not taking as extreme measures as we saw in China, it's going to take a little bit of time in Europe and the United States. We're going to see cases increasing, and it's very likely that we'll see the market reacting and perhaps overreacting to that news.
Right. That's a good point. You make a great point. Tell me about some of the things that you like. I know you watch.
Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If this is your first time here, welcome. Well, it's been a busy week. That was a clip of me talking with Nicole Petalides, host of the Watch List at TD Ameritrade Network. I always appreciate these opportunities to share our thoughts on financial TV. Not surprisingly, all attention right now is on the coronavirus. And we saw the stock market officially enter bear market territory, falling more than 20% from recent highs. Incredibly, that all happened very rapidly. As it turns out, I do have a day job, and life got in the way of publishing our planned Inspired Money episode this week. In the last 10 days, my brother and I put out 2 conference calls on the subject of coronavirus for clients. In this Inspired Money bonus episode, I'm going to share the most recent one with you. We just recorded this Thursday, March 12th, 2020. My apologies in advance because you are listening and not able to see the slides. If you want to see the slides, go to inspiredmoney.fm/coronavirus. This call runs about 20 minutes, and here it is in its entirety. Well, good afternoon. This is Andy Wong at Runnymede Capital Management, and I have the honor of welcoming you to today's coronavirus update. Let me just open by saying that I think that most financial companies and their advisors are currently telling clients to stay the course. While we are long-term investors, we've always been a little bit different in the way that we monitor market cycles and try our best to protect client accounts from the rare times that we call financial hurricanes. Every time is different, and none of us can draw from prior experiences of living through a pandemic. Today, we want to present a coronavirus update because a lot has changed since the first coronavirus Thoughts and Perspectives call that we held on March 2nd. In that call, we reviewed what we were seeing and reiterated the importance of not reacting emotionally, and we still stand by that. But let me turn it over to Chris, who is going to provide us with an update and let you know what we're looking at and why we've made some changes to client portfolios.
All right, thanks to Andy, and thanks for everyone for joining the call today. Like Andy said, we are providing an update from just 10 days ago, everything seems to be moving very quickly. And we have been monitoring data over that time in terms of the stock market and also really monitoring what is happening in terms of the coronavirus's spread internationally. And we were really hoping to see a slowdown in terms of cases. And we were really at that time watching Korea, Iran, and Italy to see if their policies were actually having an effect in slowing things down. Unfortunately, I think in Italy and Iran, the numbers have continued to grow significantly. And because of our concern of the spread across Europe and the US, we decided to take pretty decisive action to raise cash levels in our clients' accounts. That obviously depends on the individual client, and also if it's a taxable event, we have to make decisions account by account. But we have taken action, and we do want to walk you through our thoughts on what has changed. One of the big problems right now in what's bothering the market is really that there's a huge lack of visibility in terms of economic data and earnings. Really, companies don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. And that's really providing a lot of uncertainty. I mean, we really haven't seen anything in the economic data yet, but it's coming. So, I mean, that is going to be bad news down the line, but it really hasn't impacted yet. Our biggest concern really is we feel like there's a very lackadaisical response from the Western countries. We believe that they need a much more aggressive policy stance in trying to slow down the spread of coronavirus. I'm going to walk you through a few slides here. This is the heat map from Johns Hopkins University. I showed this last time 10 days ago. There were about 90,000 cases, and I think about 90% of the cases were in China. And now it's about 40% international cases, because the international cases are growing. China has basically contained the problem. Here's the slide showing the number of cases outside of China growing very significantly over the last 2 weeks and continues to grow. Given the fact that governments in the Western world are not taking really aggressive actions, I expect this to continue to rise. This was actually a slide that we showed in the last call. I just wanted to show it one more time. One of the reasons why China was successful in slowing the spread of coronavirus nationwide in China, most of their cases were in the Wuhan, Hebei province. And the reason why they were successful was because they actually had a nationwide quarantine for 2 weeks. That was a very draconian policy, but it worked. We feel like if the Western world did this, it would be very successful. We haven't really seen anyone really do this at this point. The other country that I had said earlier that we were looking at was Korea. Their cases were on the rise from late February into March, and they have been successful in slowing the number of cases. This is the number of new cases on a daily basis. Now they're down to about 100 new cases over the last 2 or 3 days. So they are having a positive impact, and that is without a nationwide quarantine, even though I would say it's pretty much a self-quarantine. A lot of the Koreans are just staying home. When they go out, they're wearing masks, and I think they're just not going out unless they have to buy food. The other thing that the Koreans have done very well is provide unbelievable testing for the coronavirus. On the picture on the right here is their drive-through coronavirus testing facility. They can test people in about 10 minutes, and you don't get out of your car. Just an unbelievable job doing testing coming out of Korea. They are testing roughly 20,000 people every single day. So a lot of their population actually has been tested for coronavirus. Even though the data on this is outdated, the US, as of March 8th, had basically barely tested anyone. And we still have significant concern that the US is not testing enough people for the coronavirus. I just got an email this morning from our local medical facility on coronavirus, and they were telling people kind of the procedures if you are worried that you have coronavirus. But in that email, they stated that there's limited supply of tests that are available, and they're trying to get more, but there's very few test kits available for them. So this is still a problem in the US, and it's kind of shocking to see the US being a leader in healthcare and just being unable to test its citizens in terms of who has coronavirus and who doesn't. And that's just a huge problem. So we really don't know how many people actually have coronavirus in the US, and that's a concern. Moving on to Italy, who kind of lets us kind of glimpse into the future in terms of potential case growth. Italy has moved from, they've moved to over 12,000 coronavirus cases. On the right, you see them playing in their soccer league to an empty stadium. They were aggressive in trying to limit big events so they wouldn't spread the virus, but that still didn't work. They also tried quarantining just the north part of Italy. That failed. We do have a friend that lives in Tuscany, and he told us that when Italy only had around 200 cases, his local hospital outside of his town in Tuscany, they had already set up like a triage tent. So if you thought you had coronavirus, you didn't have to enter the hospital. You would be tested outside, or they would actually come to your house to test you. This is obviously not happening in the US. Italy is now locking down its entire country. Basically, everything is closed except pharmacies and supermarkets. So we'll monitor to see how things work out in Italy. I would expect the number of cases to continue to grow over the next week or two. And then if the quarantine has been successful, you should see that slow and start to come down. So we'll be looking at that data going forward. But we believe many of the European countries should be taking steps that Italy is doing now, but taking this kind of step earlier. Europe has more active cases than all of China. They now have over 23,000 cases. Italy is the leader at 12,000, but you also see Spain, France, Germany, all at 2,000 plus. Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, yesterday she was saying that up to 70% of Germany could become infected. I mean, that's a shocking number. What we are even more shocked about is that they aren't really locking down the country and trying to take action. That is worrisome. And they're already past the 2,000 case mark. What's going to happen there? We really believe that they should be taking more aggressive action, and really in all of these countries in Europe, limiting travel, locking down schools, closing schools, limiting large events, and just testing people to make sure the coronavirus does not spread. And you can also see the UK has around 450 cases, even though that the US has stopped travel to most of Western Europe. The UK is still open. They do have cases there. There's a few things that have happened in the last 24 hours. We're wondering if these news events will shock the US into more dramatic action in terms of policy. In terms of entertainment, Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson both tested positive for coronavirus there in Australia, where testing is more easily available. The NBA had a case of coronavirus. I mean, it's almost shocking that they've been playing the season to full houses where coronavirus could spread and cause real damage. One of the players tested positive. The whole team was brought into the locker room, and they canceled that game, and now the season is suspended. And a tweet that I just saw is that they expect Major League Baseball to suspend spring training, and we don't even know if the season will happen. But these are major events, but we're hoping that the U.S., who has been slow to respond to the coronavirus in terms of testing and also potentially quarantining and limiting big events that can see the coronavirus spread. We want to see more policy action from the local level as well as our federal level. Another thing that we had seen was that Biogen conference up in Boston. A lot of people were infected with coronavirus because it was a large event. I mean, these events should all be canceled for the time being. In terms of monetary policy, the last time we spoke was 10 days ago, and the Fed had cut interest rates by 50 basis points. I think the big problem right now, another big problem right now, is that the Fed, as well as fiscal policy, is basically rendered powerless because you first have to focus on stopping the coronavirus. And the only way to do that is to quarantine for the most part. Self-quarantine or mandatory quarantine and a lot of testing. And that means keeping people off the streets, and that's bad for business, that's bad for the economy. Monetary policy can't do anything to stimulate that. You just have to wait. Fiscal policy, you can help businesses with loans over the short term. I think the Fed announced some short-term policy action, as well as President Trump saying that there'll be lines of credit for small businesses. I think that is positive. You have to be able to keep businesses afloat during this very tough time period. But the important thing is really to take aggressive action so that the economy is affected for a shorter period of time. If this drags on, it's going to just create longer term effects and even a harder time for these businesses to stay in business. Like I said, we have taken decisive action in clients' accounts to raise cash levels. That is depending on looking at the client's objective as well as potential capital gains. We will continue to monitor policy decisions from Europe and the US. I think that the market will not find a bottom until we start seeing much more aggressive actions from all of Europe, from Germany, France, Spain, and the US. They are going to have to make tough calls. These decisions will have to be made. Sooner or later, there's going to be quarantines to keep people in. If they just did a quarantine for 14 days, it would hurt business for 14 days, but at least you would see light at the end of the tunnel because you know that at the end of those 14 days, it should be slowed, and then you can kind of slowly get back to normal. We do believe that the economies will recover from coronavirus COVID-19, but right now the timing is uncertain. We hope that aggressive policy shortens that timeline, but at the current rate, we don't really know what the timing of that is going to be. Like I said on the last slide, the unfortunate thing is central banks and fiscal policy in the past could be effective in terms of trying to help out during a recession or a downturn, but this time it doesn't help because the only thing that can fight the virus is to try to contain it first. And then once you contain the virus, you can use fiscal policy to help speed up the recovery and perhaps make it into a V-shaped recovery instead of a longer, maybe L-shaped recovery. So those are really my thoughts. We do hope everyone is staying safe out there. Don't panic. We do hear that the lines at Costco and the supermarket are crazy today. I think we have spoke to our friends in Italy who are dealing with the lockdown. They do say that in the initial stages of the corona outbreak, there were runs on certain items, but as time went on, shortages became less and less. The only thing that you can't find is hand sanitizer, but everything else, there's no shortage of food and there's no shortage of toilet paper or anything like that. They're not worried about that. So just in terms of your day-to-day life, try to isolate yourself. Like everyone says, wash your hands as much as possible. Stay safe out there. And we are just monitoring everything very closely, and we are here to manage your accounts the best of our ability. And with that, if anyone has any questions, or if Andy has any comments, please make them now.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, if you have a question, I think there's a little sort of chat icon that you can click and type a message in. As we wait for that, I can add a little bit of anecdotal evidence that here in New Jersey, certainly school is still in session, but the expectation is that schools will be closed at any moment. We think that that's coming. I know that a lot of extracurricular activities, whether it's music, orchestra, or sports like soccer, those events have been canceled already. We're seeing at the local level a lot of steps being taken so that there are fewer gatherings and bringing people together in close quarters. I have talked to friends in Shanghai, and that was early on because we were curious how things were going on in China. And many of the people in Shanghai were not too alarmed because there was adequate distance from Wuhan, the epicenter of the virus. But in Shanghai, they were taking very extreme measures as far as no one was going out. Schools were closed. A lot of the returning to school or work after the Lunar New Year celebration, that had been extended. So many of the students were not going back to school. They were all learning remotely. And that's what we expect to see here in New Jersey. I think it's probably a matter of days, not weeks, that we see local schools, the public schools closing and having classes online. And as Chris said, right now is a time of high uncertainty. There's a lack of visibility. We don't know what the impact will be to the economy or to corporate earnings. If there's an impact, how big an impact, it's a little bit too early to tell. But we believe that as cases and diagnosis of coronavirus increases in the United States, that there is continued risk to the financial markets reacting to that data. So I want to thank you for joining us today. To our clients, thank you for working with us and entrusting us with the responsibility and privilege of being your advisor. For everyone, I encourage you to always be an advocate for yourself and your money. So whether you're visiting the doctor or auto mechanic or financial advisor, don't sit idly if something's bothering you or doesn't feel right. In my experience, talking about your money in our case and your account is always a positive thing and leads to better outcomes. If we haven't talked to you, we will be reaching out soon. We're making the rounds to contact everyone. And let me just see. I don't see any questions that have come in. So thank you for joining us today, either on the live call or if you're listening to this on the replay. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. You can contact us by email. If you don't have our email address, you can go to runnymede.com/contact, and there's an email form where you can reach us there. So, Chris, if you have any concluding comments, that's it for me, and I appreciate everybody joining us today.
Yeah, just thanks again for joining us, and we just hope everyone stays healthy and stays safe, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks so much.
Multiple people are now exiting.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Once again, I'll have slides available at inspiredmoney.fm/coronavirus. Plus, we'll list some websites for tracking and staying up to date on the latest virus cases and information. Remember, whether you make changes to your investments during times of volatility or not really depends on how long you have to invest. If you're retiring in 10 plus years, you really can weather the storm. If you don't have time or you cannot afford losses, you may choose to reduce your risk. If you have no idea, let me know if I can be of help. Email me by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. That's ANDY. If you like this episode, please do me a favor and write a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, or you can go to podchaser.com. If you're not yet subscribed, I hope that you'll do it now to ensure that you won't miss next week's show. With some luck, we'll be back to our regular programming. I'll see you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.